Who has had the greatest individual season in NFL history? We're always engrossed in discussions about the greatest of all time, dissecting players' careers and comparing their accolades and achievements. Yet one aspect often slips through the cracks: the single greatest individual season of all time. Many assert that it's an unattainable feat and that there's no mathematical equation to distill a player's performance and accolades into a conclusive measure. Well, that's precisely what I did. I pored over the annals of football history for hours, formulating a mathematical equation that unveils who truly had the best season in NFL history. An equation that encapsulates a player's performance, accolades, and efficiency, converting it into a numerical value aptly named their season score. Now let's see how last season's players compare to one another using this value. This is a graph of the top 50 performances from last season. At the graph's inception is Garrett Wilson, registering a modest season score of 43.6, just surpassing the first-string average of around 40 points. As we progress, the first running back, Tyler Algier, emerges with a score of 50.5. Moving a bit higher, we encounter two celebrated receiver twos in the form of Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle, both separated by almost 10 points. Now let's ascend into the elite scores of the 70s. Here we find Jalen Waddle's counterpart Tyreek Hill, and the only tight end to make the graph, Travis Kelce, both securing spots in the top 30. Just above them are the first quarterbacks on the graph, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, and Tua Tagovailoa, who nearly broke into the top 20 despite missing the end of last season. With a score of 99.5, narrowly missing the all-pro scores in the 100s is Justin Jefferson, rightly the best wide receiver from last season. Right beside him is Tom Brady, who in his 23rd NFL season maintained an all-pro level performance. Now skipping past the AFC powerhouses Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry, we discovered Josh Jacobs with his breakout year recording a noteworthy season of 112.5. Pushing into the 130s, we enter the realm of true Hall of Fame performances. Here, we observe the most significant gap on the graph, with Joe Burrow committing a staggering 20-point lead ahead of Geno Smith, making his season score 138.3. But he's not alone, because with another jump, Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen both reached the 150s. Josh Allen would beat the best player from last season if Patrick Mahomes didn't exist, because Patrick Mahomes boasts a jaw-dropping season score of 188.4, separating himself from the current greats of last season. Now let's take a step back. How many players from last season have secured a spot in the top 50 seasons of all time? That would be only 3. Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes. These 3 players are currently etching their names into NFL history right before our eyes. But here's the twist. Mahomes' spectacular 188.4 season performance doesn't crack the top 5, because the names that stand at the top might not be who you think. In the realm of NFL football, we're well aware that it's a team game, making it challenging to quantify the individual success of a player over a season. Unlike sports such as the NBA, where a single player can significantly impact the court, the complexity of the NFL field requires a much more nuanced evaluation. Yet some players still have managed to achieve this remarkable feat. In crafting this equation, I recognize the need to exclude statistics heavily influenced by a team's overall performance. Factors like team wins, playoff appearances, and Super Bowl victories didn't make the cut. We're honing in on the best individual season, thus disregarding these playoff performances due to their heightened emphasis on team collaboration. Take Drew Brees in 2008, for instance. A stellar quarterback leads a historically bad Saints offense to an 8-8 record but falls just short of making the playoffs. It wouldn't have been fair if his overall team's performance didn't allow him to obtain playoff wins to apply to his season score. So I narrowed down the criteria to these 10 factors: passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards, passing touchdowns, receiving and rushing touchdowns, if they led the league in yards or touchdowns, all-pro selection, Pro Bowl MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, and overall league MVP. The total of these 10 metrics forms a player's season score, providing a comprehensive measure of their performance and accolades for any given season. Naturally though, quarterbacks hold a greater influence on the game, so I adjusted the equation for passing yards and passing touchdowns to be on par with the other positions. And after spending hours delving into NFL stats and history, combing through the ancient scripts of time, I have found the single greatest individual season in NFL history. Kicking off at the 50th spot all-time is Aaron Rodgers, showcasing his remarkable 2012 performance with a season score of 140.6. For reference, Aaron Rodgers had 4,300 passing yards and 39 touchdowns, earning him this score. That is the caliber of these players. Moving up, we quickly encounter Tom Brady at a score of 143, joined by running back Todd Gurley and Deshaun Watson's surprising 2020 season, both matching Brady's score. Progressing further, running backs Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry break into the top 40 all-time, where the graph sees the entry of Steve Young with his 1992 season securing a score of 149.6. As we move into the 150s, Tom Brady and Drew Brees make their second appearances, while Aaron Rodgers claims 2 more spots with his 2014 and 2016 performances. It is at this point, Earl Campbell, the oldest entry standing tall from 1979, comes holding the 27th spot all-time 4 decades later. Before entering the 160s, we find last season's runner-up Josh Allen securing 23rd all-time. In the 160s, Tom Brady makes his 3rd appearance on the graph with 162.9 respectively. And it is here where we stop for just a moment. There are 35 players just within this 25 score segment on the graph, meaning there are only 15 players remaining, yet we aren't even halfway up. Because at number 15, we revisit Aaron Rodgers for the 4th time, marking his best season score of 174. Above him is Brett Favre and Drew Brees, followed by Peyton Manning with an impressive 178.6. Moving a bit higher, Marshall Faulk and Terrell Davis break into the 180s. Dan Marino claims his 9th spot with his best performance of 186.5. Followed by last season's MVP Patrick Mahomes, who, like I said, didn't crack into the top 5. Approaching the top 5, Sean Alexander and Lamar Jackson reach into the upper 180s, still significantly behind the best all-time. Pushing into the 190s, Cam Newton's miraculous 2015 season lands him at 5th all-time. But casting down a shadow above him is Tom Brady's best season with a score of 197.3, less than 3 points from reaching a score of 200. But the top 3 best individual seasons break this barrier. Remember, a typical first-string player averages a score of 40. These players are individually worth 5 times more than a typical starter. One of those being Patrick Mahomes at 3rd all-time, claiming his 2nd spot with his 2018 performance, surpassing Tom Brady himself. However, he's not the only quarterback to do so, as Peyton Manning secures the 2nd spot all-time, outscoring Mahomes by an additional 5 points, landing at a score of 206.7. Finally, the best individual season in NFL history, belonging not to a wide receiver, not to a quarterback, but to a running back. LaDainian Tomlinson takes the lead with a staggering season score of 208, surpassing every player in NFL history as a running back. Now let's compare last season's MVP Patrick Mahomes with the first all-time LaDainian Tomlinson. Patrick boasts a season with over 5,000 passing yards, 350 rushing yards, 41 passing touchdowns, 4 rushing touchdowns, led the league in passing yards and touchdowns while obtaining an All-Pro selection and the league MVP. Underdogs. How in the world is LaDainian Tomlinson going to top that season? Well, let's look at his stats. LaDainian has an insane season of over 1,800 rushing yards, 500 receiving yards, 28 rushing touchdowns, with 3 more receiving touchdowns, led the league in rush yards and touchdowns while obtaining an All-Pro selection, Offensive Player of the Year, and League MVP as a running back. To put this in an even bigger perspective is to look at their total touches. In the 2022 NFL season, Patrick Mahomes touched the ball 1,094 times. LaDainian Tomlinson, on the other hand, only touched the ball 404. LaDainian had less than half the opportunities than Patrick Mahomes did while putting up record numbers as a running back. But at the end of the day, the NFL is a team sport. No matter how impactful one player may be and the records they may set, they would have never been able to succeed as they did without their teammates around them. It's been Underdogs. I'll see you soon.